So Fox News had their Democratic town hall with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and I'm going to say something really crazy that I never thought I would say. Fox News was pretty fair tonight. This is a first for me because when you see these Democratic town halls, especially when it comes to CNN with Chris Cuomo, they're always so much harder on Bernie Sanders. They ask these ridiculous questions, including the MSNBC Democratic town hall. They always cut Bernie Sanders off while they'll let Hillary Clinton drone on forever. But Bret Baier was actually pretty fair to both candidates. Now, to be 100% objective, he did push Hillary Clinton harder when it comes to the email scandal. But I mean, overall, this was the most fair Democratic town hall I'd seen yet, and this came from Fox News. So, really, really strange turn of events here that this election had made Fox News the more fair source when it comes to Democratic town halls than the so-called liberal media that is MSNBC and CNN. But putting that aside, getting to the candidates, I'm really glad that Bernie Sanders clarified his, quote, white people don't know what it's like to be poor, or to feel poverty or whatever argument, because those of you who are subscribed, you know that I talked about the Democratic debate, and I posted my analysis of that this morning, but I didn't even address it because it just flew over my head, because I think as a Bernie Sanders supporter, I automatically knew exactly what he meant, because he's been talking about poverty for the entirety of his campaign and income inequality, so obviously he knows about poverty, and he knows that every single person, regardless of their gender, race, ethnicity, whatever, feels poverty. So I didn't think anything of his comment. Like, I knew what he meant, and I knew that he misspoke, but I'm glad that he clarified this. Now, he also clarified that he did vote for the auto industry bailout, so I'm glad that these two things were addressed by Bernie Sanders, because for me, I think that I'm so biased and that I've listened to Bernie Sanders speak for hours at this point that I just know what he means. I know all the points he's going to hit, and so it doesn't occur to me when he kind of steps out of line and says something that may catch an average viewer off guard. So I'm glad that these come up, and I'm glad that he addressed it. So when it comes to where does the right of universal healthcare come from, I thought he gave a great answer of being a human being. But here's what I would have done. I would have said, look, Brett, there's two components to this answer. First, I think being a human being, that does entail you to the right to life, and healthcare is a fundamental part of that. And second of all, I think there is a strong legal argument to be made for universal healthcare, and there's a ton of different directions that you can go when it comes to the legal argument. Now, one area that I kind of had a problem with Bernie is that he didn't directly answer the question as to how he would bring down debt. He kind of explained it in a roundabout way to where you'd have to fill in the gaps for him. Basically, what he's saying is that if you raise the purchasing power of people, if you put them through college and allow them to get better jobs, if you make it so that way they don't have to pay these private insurance premiums, well, in the end, they're going to have more money, they're going to spend more, and when they make more money, they're going to end up paying more taxes, and then we can pay down the debt this way. But he didn't really directly address that, and I think that he had a really good opportunity here to kind of bring on some more anti-establishment Republicans. And look, I think he probably did a great job overall, but I wish that with respect to this particular portion of the event, he would have really answered the question directly, because I understood what he was saying, but he really answered it in an indirect way. Okay, so getting to taxing the rich. So this was a good question to bring up, because Bernie Sanders gave a really thorough and detailed answer as to why when you tax when you do trickle-down economics, it just doesn't work. And the guy who asked the question rolled his eyes at Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders was answering the question, when Bernie Sanders said that you need to raise the minimum wage. First and foremost, trickle-down economics is the most thoroughly debunked economic theory in the history, but yet it won't die, and everybody that is a Republican basically agrees with it. So it's absolutely ridiculous, and anyone who even entertains the notion that trickle-down economics is a plausible theory should get laughed out of the room. But this is something that, unfortunately, a large portion of the population still believes in, but I think that Bernie Sanders gave a great answer. However, the eye rolling really rubbed me the wrong way. This is a Trump supporter who is supporting a candidate that just bases his entire campaign on hyperbole and ginning up fears about minorities and whatnot. And he doesn't have any substantive policy details. You can go to his website and look at his plans, but they're not substantive. He doesn't actually have realistic policy proposals. Paying for a wall and getting Mexico to pay for a wall on the border, give me a break. So the eye-rolling dude got on my nerves. I'm gonna be straight up about that. Now, it was really, really, really good of him to bring up money in politics, because this is an issue with universal appeal. Republican voters could potentially jump ship and support Bernie Sanders just based on this issue, because it's really, really important. What is it, like over 90% of the population wants money out of politics? So like for me, just personally speaking, I have really strong political opinions on a ton of issues, but I would vote for a Republican who is campaigning on the basis of getting money out of politics and wants public financed elections. So because I have that position, I could probably extrapolate and guess that many Republicans feel the same way about a Democrat as well. So I'm glad that Bernie Sanders brought this up. Okay, so getting to Hillary Clinton. So she clearly hasn't learned her lesson about toppling dictators. And one thing that scared me was she said compromise is not a dirty word, it's what is required of democracy, and it's something that I'm going to do. Now, in actuality, is compromise a bad thing? No, it's not. But when it comes to the Clintons, I'm terrified about them using that word compromise, because we saw what it got us when it comes to like Bill Clinton, for example, with the welfare reform bill. So he allowed Republicans to run roughshod. Now, to be fair to him, he vetoed that bill twice until they amended certain portions of it. But in the end, he signed Republican welfare into law that made it so that way it's more difficult for people to qualify for welfare benefits, and that there's lifetime cutoffs. They get less benefits even if they do qualify. They have to meet certain requirements and whatnot. It was bad reform, and it really exacerbated the problem of poverty. So when I hear a Clinton talking about compromise, I'm thinking about someone who is going to start in the middle and then negotiate with extreme right-wing candidates. So by the time you're done, the compromise is somewhere on the far right. So it's scary when I hear someone like that talk about compromise. What I want is compromise in terms of Bernie Sanders type of compromise, where he's starting way to the left, comparatively speaking to, in our political system. He's starting way to the left, and maybe you'll end up in the center by the time you're finished negotiating. So I don't like hearing that word from Hillary Clinton. If you're going to start in the center, then you better actually hold your ground and not compromise just based on, your own political positions. So her college affordability plan is something that I have such a problem with, because her whole thing is, look, if you can't afford it, that's the key. But what this doesn't account for is the people who barely qualify. So if you're like a 24-year-old and they're still going to base your income off of your parents' income, who do make a lot of money, but you don't live with your parents and you support yourself, then you're not going to qualify, presumably, under Hillary Clinton's plan. This has been the status quo for years, and how it's been done. Or if you just overqualify in terms of your income, well, then you're going to have to still get in debt. So this is something that, look, there's no reason why we can't take an extra step forward and be like countries such as Chile and Germany and actually just offer free college tuition. Her plan requires you to work and do work study. You can already do that. And furthermore, many of us go to college while we're working full-time jobs. So how are we going to go to college and then work our full-time job and then work more on top of it? So it's just a plan that, I think it's an outdated plan, and she needs to get on board with where the country wants us to go, where the younger generation wants us to go, and that's universal universal college tuition, but that too. Okay, now here's the worst part of the town hall for me. She attacked Bernie Sanders using a Republican talking point. She said we shouldn't run up the debt and the size of government without knowing how to pay for it. Okay, but she was in the same event that I watched, right? She obviously heard what Bernie Sanders talked about. He just said how he was going to pay for his policies. When it comes to the college tuition plan, a tax on Wall Street speculation. When it comes to his healthcare plan, he has a detailed, comprehensive plan on his website. So, it's really frustrating that she's doing this, because he's talked about how he's going to pay for his policies. So when she says this, she's just lying. And again, it was a Republican talking point. I know you're on Fox News and whatnot, But when you talk about running up the size of government, look, I don't care how big government is. I don't care how small government is. In theory, yes, I want government to be as small as possible, but what matters is policy outcomes. So if you tell me that we have to increase the size of government by 10% to make sure that policy X happens that will save lives, I'm in favor of that. If you tell me that we have to decrease the size of government by 5% in order to boost the incomes of people, then I'm in favor of that. I don't care. So I think that the way that people are glued to their government philosophy in terms of the size, big or small, doesn't matter. You got to get towards the good policy. And this is why I say this, because nobody is consistent on this matter anyway. When it comes to Republicans, for example, the huge advocates of small government, well, they actually want big government when it comes to NSA spying. They want big government when it comes to women's rights to choose and abortion. They want big government when it comes to marriage equality. They don't want gay people to be able to get married. That's the biggest government ever, when it can fit in the size of your room or a woman's uterus. So nobody's consistent on this matter. So she was pandering, and it made her look really bad right here. But right after she pandered to Republicans, she pandered again to Bernie Sanders supporters and talked about how we need to come together when this is over. But I'm sorry, but you should have thought about that before you ran the most reprehensible campaign we've seen in a really long time, besides Donald Trump. Now, she's nothing like Donald Trump in terms of insulting her opponents and whatnot, but she ran a really dirty campaign against Bernie Sanders. She smeared him. She referred to him as, or implied that he was sexist at one point because he made the comment that we can't yell back and forth about each other about gun policies, when he was just talking about Republicans and Democrats, but she said that the yelling remark was directed at her, and that's what men use to women. She implied he's sexist when that wasn't the point. She took him out of context. She also implied that he was racist because he talked about how the gun debate comes down to a rural-urban issue, and she said when people say urban, like Bernie Sanders, she didn't say that, but she was referring to him. She said when people say urban, they often mean black. And that wasn't the case. She took him out of context to smear him. So she ran a really dirty campaign. So if she thinks that we're just going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya right away before it's even over, it's delusional. So now, here's one thing that I want to talk about. She always talks about the Affordable Care Act, and one of the audience members raised a great point. Here's the problem with the Affordable Care Act. It's not affordable. It's not affordable at all. In fact, many of us purchase the cheapest premium that we can find because all of it is so ridiculously priced. I mean, if you actually want good quality healthcare from the Affordable Care Act, when you go to the markets, you're going to have to spend upwards of $400. That is not affordable. That is not affordable at all. So, okay, we have to move past the Affordable Care Act. I understand that it's a step in the right direction. I understand that expanding it would be a step in the right direction. But in the end, it's not the end-all be-all, and Hillary Clinton needs to acknowledge that. But she can't, because she's a millionaire. She's a one-percenter. So she's never had to worry about not being able to afford her health bills. She's never had to not go to the doctor because she can't afford a deductible. She's a one-percenter. She's not with us. She's not one of us. She can't possibly empathize with poor people. So this is why she loves the Affordable Care Act, because she doesn't understand what it's like to be on the bottom of the totem pole. But anyways, I don't want to rant and rave too long. That's my overall analysis. I thought that Bernie Sanders did a great job, but in the end, I was just surprised how fair Bret Baier was overall. So I guess kudos to Fox News.